Good evening. Welcome to the Barefoot Bay Recreation District Board of Trustees regular meeting for June 23rd, 2020 at Building D&E. The meeting is now called to order. As we do before each meeting, the board would like to take a moment of silence to remember all our service personnel, both past and present, who have or are still fighting to protect this great country that we live in. Also, let's remember all our Barefoot Bay residents, both past and present. We will follow this with a pledge of allegiance led by General Counsel Cliff Reppinger. Well, let's now have a moment of silence, please. Thank you, Cliff. Roll call. Trustee Compton, would you please be kind enough to read the roll call?
Yes. Chairman Klosky, are you with us?
Yes.
Trustee Mino?
Yes.
Trustee Henderson? Yes. Trustee Compton is here. Trustee Loveland?
Yes.
Also with us tonight, we have John Coffey, our district manager. We have Stephanie Brown, our district clerk. Cliff Reppinger, our general counsel. And Matt Getz, our property services manager. And, Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Raj. First on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have a set of minutes for June 12, 2020 to be approved. Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
A second.
Randy made a motion, second by Mr. Mino. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Trustee Loveland, would you please be kind enough to read the Treasury report for June the 23rd?
This is the Treasurer, Barefoot Bay Recreation District Treasury Report, June 23rd, 2020. Cash balances in general fund as of June 15th, 20, $2,500. Operating cash in banks, MB&T operating account, $2,741,264.49. Interest-bearing accounts, SB&A reserve account, $697,770.89. Total cash balances in general fund, $3,441,535.38. Total daily deposits and assessments received for June 5th through June 15th. Total daily deposits, $17,772.57. Assessments received, $41,800. Total deposits received, $59,572.57. Expenditures over $5,000 for June 5th through June 15th. Software maintenance and support, $5,282. Golf course and ball field maintenance, $38,691.16. Insurance, our fourth installment, $36,668.26. Employee health insurance, $28,355.14. Final payment on the roof replacement for Pool 2 and Pool 3, $14,250. Legal fees, $10,570. Payroll taxes, $13,534.92. Payroll, $45,119.83. Total expenditures over $5,000, $192,471.31. I submit the Treasurer's report.
Thank you, Randy. Motion to approve as read.
I would move that we approve the Treasurer's report as presented.
I'll second that.
Mr. Mino made it first, second by Roger Compton. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you. Audience participation. John?
There is one letter for me to read before I open up the conference call system. It's from Richard Schwatlow, 636 Marlin Circle. At a past BOT meeting, I asked about the Bay's $25,000 spending cap and how it was progressing through the court system. I was told the Bay no longer has a $25,000 spending cap and there is nothing progressing through the court system pertaining to the spending cap. On June 12th BOT meeting, it was discussed that we could not purchase homes through the NRP because it would exceed the $25,000 spending cap. My understanding is a referendum vote on the November ballot would be required to raise the spending cap stated in the charter if approved by the residents on the referendum. This topic will be discussed during the next several board meetings. Will there be an explanation as to the exactly what the spending cap of $25,000 applies to at that time? Please enlighten me. Do we or do we not have a spending cap? My understanding is the referendum has lost the last 3 times it was proposed. If it does not pass a fourth referendum, what does the board do? On a second issue, briefly, 2 years ago, just before the board elections, there was a great deal of discussion on the Bay taking out a loan or a bond. The conversation did not move forward and the subject of a loan appeared to have been dropped. Now, just before the board elections, the proposed budget shows a $1 million loan and no one blinked an eye. What a difference 2 years makes. Richard Schwatlow.
Welcome to AT&T's teleconference service. Please enter your access code. To join the conference as the host, press star. Otherwise, please enter your host password followed by the #. Please enter your billing identifier followed by the #sign. You entered 11109. To accept, press 1. Otherwise, there are 1 participants on the call, including you. You're joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands,
John, you
press
are.
star
So
pound.
you can answer because I'm too far.
Mr. Chairman, Kathy Mendes, who's down at Building A, says there's no callers down there. Would you like to leave it open for a little bit? Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, this is Fran Selecki, 910 U Street. First, I'd like to say thank you to the board and John for all that you've been doing so far. But based on the fact that the numbers are going up, not just in the Bay, but in all the surrounding communities, and I understand that the testing has increased, which means that there are probably many more cases out there that are still not detected. I do, however, see that people are becoming less careful and mindful, and in my opinion, I think masks and social distancing in the Bay should be mandated for the protection of the employees and the residents. And I would just like to say thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Any others?
Anybody else on the line? Anybody else?
Yes. Audience participation is now closed. On unfinished business, we're going to have phase reopening discussion. John?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, trustees, residents watching at home and in Building A. As at the last meeting, the board moved into phase 2 with specific dates. dates. As of right now, everything is open with the exception of the 19th hole that was going to be opened up. I did send you out a notice, and we've tried to publicize that due to some delays in the floor replacement of the kitchen in Building A, we won't be reopening on Friday out of an abundance of caution, but we'll be opening next Wednesday morning. At this point, I think everything is going fine. Ms. Selecki, I've had a few people make comments about that. It is easier said than done because Mr. Armington has shown me some HR reports from other organizations in Florida that have tried mandatory masks for their employees, and you can basically go to the doctor and get a note that says you can't wear a mask, and we can't force that employee to wear a mask if they have a doctor's note. Our employees are provided masks if they want to wear them. They're provided gloves. We have hand sanitizer everywhere. They've been provided training on how to stay safe. Everyone who enters any of our facilities or buildings are getting their temperatures taken. I believe we're at a good place right now. Yes, the number of cases are rising, but it's a sad state, but there's no cure for the virus right now. If the board would like to adjust this any at all, but my recommendation is to maintain status quo till the next meeting.
I believe that we should just leave it in phase 2 the way it is right now and continue, like I said, to the next meeting. Whatever, I'd like to have a report from the rest of the board members.
I agree. I don't think we should move into phase 3. I mean, we just really got into phase 2. Let's not get crazed. I think we should remain at phase 2 for at least another 2 weeks or whatever it is until the next meeting.
Are we on? Can you hear that?
Go ahead.
Am I on?
Go ahead.
Oh, I agree also. I think the staff is doing a good job. I think it's working out fine. I mean, there may be people who don't like some of the things we do, but I believe you're doing the right thing the right way. The cases are going up. Again, we've only been open for a week, 2 weeks, and it's 2 weeks after that things go. I think I heard the other day we're up to 3 cases in the Bay now or something, whatever it is. But I just think you're doing it the right way, and I applaud you for sticking to this.
Raj.
By the way, one final question. I'm sorry, Roger. You said we're open phase 2. I got the question the other day. Is C open? Is building C open?
No, the only assembly building is this building that's open.
Okay, I had questions about that. So building C is not open.
No. And part of the reason we didn't recommend opening that up is it is a very small
That's what I told people, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Raj.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I think the staff's done a wonderful job of just effective and thoughtful protocols that'll help to mitigate any spread of this here in the community. And I say right now we stay the course.
Thank you. Randy?
Yeah, I have to agree with it, too. I did do a little bit of homework before coming in. I knew this was on the agenda and spoke with Denise, who is our bar supervisor, and to just find out how things have gone and what the ease of their life looks like. And she seemed to think it was going very well. If anything, we're under numbers. I think we're allowed 40 in the lounge, which would be 38 with a bartender and a checker. And they've not even come close to hitting that number. So I think that the homeowners are showing great restraint, and those that want to come out are coming out. Those that want to stay cautious are. And they're observing the distancing from everything that Denise said. The stools are apart, the 6 feet, the tables. So I think that they're doing a heck of a job. I wouldn't want that with people drinking and you have to tell them to stay apart. So I think that they're doing a really good job. I'm for staying right where we are.
Thank you.
Question before you get off it. John, have we had any problems with people? I mean,
I wouldn't say problems. As you know, with our country as a whole, there's a variety of opinions.
Sure.
One gentleman was very strong in his opinion that I should be mandating masks for all employees and all residents in any buildings. And I explained to him my position and told him, you know, respectfully, we were going to disagree. And as he turned to leave, a resident waiting for her badge looks at me and says, "You handled that so well."
good.
And so even when I tell somebody bad news, somebody else thinks it's a proper way to go.
Very good. Thank you.
There's no reason to go any further on discussion, so this is closed. We'll go now. Authorization for Chairman Klosky to sign shopping center lease for building 1, unit 2, and part of 3, the old barber shop. John?
As you received an email early this morning with the draft lease, Mr. Reppinger had forwarded that to Mr. Shaw, who I spoke to Cliff just before the meeting, and Mr. Shaw is agreeable to the lease the way it is, so we would recommend the board authorize Chairman Klosky to execute the contract, and we will be back to full occupancy, something we haven't been in over 4 years.
Yeah. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion that we authorize the chairman to sign the lease and execute that contract.
I'll second.
Mr. Minor made a motion. First, who seconded?
I did. I seconded.
Randy. Okay. Any discussion on this motion? If none, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you. Next, the adoption of the FY21 budget. Go ahead, John.
What started for staff in October and the trustees in early December now comes to a close. As the mail out to the property owners indicate, the FY21 budget is $6.7 million in total. It contains a $2 a month increase in the assessment, a 2.5% increase in food and beverage prices, a 10% in golf membership fees, and a proposed $1 million 7-year bank loan to cover one-time projects. There is 78 full-time equivalent positions, which for folks new to government means if you have 2 part-time employees each working 20 hours, they count as 1 full-time equivalent. Most of our employees are part-time. This adoption of the budget does not require a public hearing as the assessment adoption next. Therefore, we are required to adopt this prior to July 1. So staff recommends the board approve Resolution 2020-08 adopting the FY21 budget as mailed out to the residents. And Mr. Reppinger will read the resolution.
Resolution 2020-08, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Barefoot Bay Recreation District establishing and adopting a budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021, providing for conflicts, providing an effective date.
Motion to approve FY21 budget.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve Resolution 2020-08, adopting the fiscal year 21 budget as mailed out to the residents.
Roger made a motion. Second.
I second that motion.
Randy made a second. Any discussion on the motion? The only thing I'm going to say on that is I'm all in favor of that budget. It's well prepared by John, and he started that in November and ended it on in April, so we can have it out by on April 1st. And everything that's in there, I approve everything. But the only thing I'm dissatisfied is with trying to borrow that $1 million. So I'm against that. So anybody else? All right, then all in favor of the motion with voice count. Luann? Mr. Mino?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Me? No. So it's 4-1. Thank you. Next, public hearing and adoption of FY21 assessment rates. John?
Mr. Chairman, The accompanying resolution will adopt an assessment rate of $816 per lot for next year. This does require a public hearing, so once a general counsel has read the resolution, I will open the conference call system.
Yes. Go ahead.
Resolution 2020-09, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Barefoot Bay Recreation District establishing an assessment of $816 for each improved residential lot within said district to fund the 2020-21 fiscal year operating budget of the district, providing for the collection of said assessment in the manner provided for ad valorem taxes pursuant to Section 197.363 Florida statutes, providing that said assessment shall be a valid lien upon each improved residential lot so assessed until such assessment has been paid in full, providing that said assessment shall be considered part of the county tax, subject to the same penalties, charges, fees, and remedies provided for the enforcement and collection of county taxes, providing for conflicts, providing an effective date.
John, you want to open the conference call?
Welcome to AT&T's teleconference service. To join the conference as the host, press star. Please enter your billing identifier followed by the pound sign. You entered 11109. To accept, press 1. There are 1 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands, press star pound.
Good afternoon. The public hearing regarding FY21 budget proposed assessment rate is now open. So is there anybody there that would like to speak on the assessment?
Hello, does anyone like to speak on the assessment?
Hearing none, it's now closed. The chair will now entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept Resolution 2020-09.
Luan made a motion. Second.
I'll second it.
Roger seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, just clarification.
Go
Again, the motion states, you have to read it again, Cliff, per parcel or whatever, but now that is in no way changing what we have as grandfathered lots where they're double and all of that, right? I mean, there's no way legally somebody could say we changed that.
I don't know if I understand your question. You're talking about the definition of lot?
Well, yeah, read that sentence again per, how does it read?
Hang on.
$816 per,
It says, you can look on the screen, $816 for each improved residential lot.
okay, so
within
I'm just
said
simply
district.
saying, so those people in the Bay who have dual lots, who have only been paying for one lot up to this time, this in no way changes that.
This doesn't have any effect on how a lot is determined, no. If you are viewed as a single lot under the DOR definition of the lot,
Okay, okay.
then this resolution does not change that designation.
Very good. Thank you.
And just for anybody watching at home for the first time, we will be bringing another agenda item back in August to adopt the assessment roll, which has every person's name and lot on it that goes to the county.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is the discussion of converting area behind the shopping center into a passive park. Luann, go ahead.
Is it my turn in the sun today?
Yes.
Okay. Every time somebody mentions that 2.76 acres behind the shopping center, whether it's for a new building or a walk-in clinic or whatever, I make it known that I'd like it to remain green and to have trees planted there. I wanted to go to each club or group in the Bay and ask or beg them to donate a tree. Not a 10-foot tree, just a 3 or 4 foot tree, not too expensive. Look into the future, it would be a beautiful park-like place. I wanted it to be donations, a real citizen-made place, not for Barefoot Bay to foot the bill. Everybody has someone they'd like to remember or just be from the group. I thought that the group that donated a tree could water it and care for it till it was rooted. I even went to Rock City Gardens and priced trees to be sure they weren't out of a decent price range. And then reality struck. There's no water there. A well would have to be dug, and then it would depend on the Bay to do that, and that's not what I wanted to do. Also, we just passed the budget for next year, so it would have to be voted on for the next year. So I'm going to withdraw that from the agenda today and rethink everything for the next budget year.
Thank you, Luann. You
Certainly.
made it short and sweet. And while you're still there, the next thing is the discussion of calling for a referendum to increase the charter limit of $25,000. Luann?
Okay. As I understand it, which we don't know where that goes. As I understand it, the $25,000 cap is for new structures, for new buildings. So we can spend $1 million or $20 million if we want to fix something. The $25,000 cap is for new buildings. But $25,000 in 1984, which is when that was all passed, was $25,000 is now worth $62,000. I mean, anything that was $25,000 then is $62,000 then. We need to do something about this. But what I want to do with this is ask my fellow board members what they think. It's going to have to go out to referendum, and I know that it has not passed 3 times, and Cliff just sent us a whole information packet about that. But what do you guys think? I mean, should we look into this and do it? Should we just let it go? What do you think?
Actually, and back in 2007, it was thinking for $125,000, and it failed. Then it came back in 2011 for $75,000, it failed, and then 2014 said for $75,000, it failed. So I don't know if.
Well, I mean, I know, Joe. I know it failed 3 times, but $25,000 really handicaps the Bay. Handicaps the board. I mean, it's like tying us in knots because we can't do anything for $25,000. And if we do something, then it has to go out for referendum anyway.
Right. What's the board want to do?
Well, I have 2 questions on it. One is, what are we looking to buy or build that we need to increase it? And the other is, what does it what is a rough figure cost to take something to referendum? Does anybody, just a ballpark?
Well, the first question is NRP purchases would fit under this. And with the rising property values, we're pretty much hitting our limit of being able to procure more homes to take them out and resell the property. The cost of putting something on a referendum varies based on the election and whether it falls at the end. It creates a second page. Cliff can opine. He's done this much more than I, but there is no set cost as far as I know. It's sort of like election costs. Our off-year elections cost the Bay more than the elections when there's president or governor on the ballot.
So I'll jump in and answer both questions as well from my perspective. And Ms. Henderson at the beginning, she kind of phrased this or framed this within the ambit of construction, and there's a lot of, I think, confusion in the Bay among residents who maybe haven't been aware of this issue or are just coming into understanding this issue about how the spending authority applies. And just so everyone is clear and on the same page, it's not just construction. What the phrase that's utilized in the charter with regard to the spending authority is acquisition, it's a purchase, lease, conveyance, or acquisition of common, real, or tangible personal property. That's how it's framed. So or that's how it's worded in the charter. And so there have been 2 judicial decisions in Brevard County Circuit Court that have opined that maintenance expenditures or even new structure expenditures on district property that serve or replace existing facilities or are operational in nature fall outside of the cap. But things that would be new acquisitions that the district does not have, that those would be inside the cap. And everything is a case-by-case basis depending on exactly what it is that we're talking about. But Mr. Coffey's example of the NRP properties is the perfect example because those are properties that the district doesn't own. They're not currently district property. And the district is going after those acquisitions of real property, and to the extent that they would exceed the cap, clearly they fall within the limitation there. So that's what you're really talking about. There's many examples of expenditures that the district has that fall outside of the cap based on those judicial determinations. Building F is a perfect example. The Building A replacement or renovation project is another example. There are other kinds of acquisitions that the district goes through that serve maintenance purposes or operational purposes that fall outside of the cap. So there's a number of different things that the district can do, even though the cap is in place. But there are certain things that the district would acquire or expenditures that it would make that would fall within the cap. And so, that's what you're talking about as far as, what's at issue. Candidly, in the last couple of years, other than the NRP properties, there haven't been a lot of situations where we've run into significant cap issues, but definitely in the NRP process, if you're going to go over that amount, then you would need to raise the cap in order to do that. So as far as a cost of a referendum, you've got the template, so it's not a tremendously costly exercise. It's basically the doc prep work, you all taking the time to review and decide exactly how you want to phrase it on the ballot, which I think there has been some maybe scrutiny about how that actual question has been worded. There's only so many ways that you can ask the question. It has to be a yes or no question in order to be a valid referendum. So again, there's only so many ways you can articulate it, but you certainly can play with the language a little bit. And so it's the process of drafting and approving a resolution calling for that election. I think that the costs of running that referendum question on the ballot are probably pretty minuscule because the supervisor generally will add those things in a general election cycle to the ballot without much cost. In addition, if you're running a special election, well then yes, it would be a significant cost. But in a general election, the costs are pretty minor. I did send an email in advance of this meeting to the supervisor of elections trying to get a deadline date, and I haven't gotten a response back yet. I know that deadline date is going to be sometime in August. I know that because I've done other referendums and we've been through this process before, and I know the timing of it. So I have no doubt that it's going to be sometime in that August timeframe or at the earliest late July. So you've got about 2 meetings to play with that language if you wanted to look at a resolution and then to get the answer to that question on costs if the supervisor is going to charge you anything in addition to what they typically charge. There may be some ballot prep costs that they charge, but I don't think it's all that significant. The question really is whether you think you want to send it back out again, and that's entirely within the purview of the board.
I'm sorry.
My thought on that is when I look at the past history of referendums that have failed, it's my opinion that they have failed because of our lack of education to the community. We've not given the community enough information to get behind something in a positive fashion. So when they go into a voting booth, they read the question, and we're so limited in how we can explain it at that point that they may not understand the full ramification of it. Understanding that this is a majority of this would be used for NRP, if not 90% of it. I think it would be good if we could, between now and approving something like this, of moving this forward, if we could get a report to the homeowner of how successful and in viable ways that the NRP has been, such as how many properties we've bought for what amount, how many we've sold for what amount, what our turnaround time looked like, and what our maintenance costs for holding that property between purchase and sell. I think the homeowners could get some comfort out of that. It's good. I think they'll understand the fact of buying these derelict properties is a good thing for the Bay and brings our property values up. But I also think they need to see what their investment is getting them and how that turnaround is.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. I agree with Randy that explaining what we're going to put in a bond issue or on a referendum and education about it is the most important thing. If people don't understand it, they vote no. And in this case, people, I know, a couple things happen. Number one, I've mentioned how it's $25,000 to certain people, and I say, geez, the NRP is coming up with some properties. A couple have been up there we want to buy, and they haven't been able to do it because you can't go over that cap. And people immediately say, why don't you just raise it? And then there's that other group of people out there who think if you're going to raise this, boy, we're going to go out and we're going to buy big sailboats for everybody, and we're going to do all kinds of stuff. And we don't do that. We can spend money now on almost anything we want except real property. I mean, they have no control over really what we do now for the money except real property. And that's all we're going to really be using this for is the NRP. Mostly. It would almost only be for that. Now, if we've got all of those homes out there that we'd like to buy at some point, and because we've had the same cap for years and years and years, and people just think, well, we're not going to give them any more money, we're not going to let them spend that, we're losing out. We're not improving the neighborhood, and we're not improving Barefoot Bay. We're not taking those properties out so that new homes can come in. I truly think that, to me, looking at a cap like this for so many years, I mentioned this to John when I first came on the board, I couldn't believe it, that we were limited to that amount of money spent without a referendum. I mean, this is really budgeting in the past when we're still doing that. And there are things we need to improve and we need to get up. It's really, as I said, for real tangible property, and I think if we put something out there and get out and explain it, like Randy said, and do a good job of educating people that this is what it's for, and we don't, you know, whether it's $50,000, just get it up so that we can buy some of these homes. That's all we're really looking for, I believe.
Right?
Yeah, Chairman, and I agree. To me, NRP program is one of the best things that the district has come up with in a number of years now. It's doing and has done a great job to help to revitalize and to repair some of the areas in our community. Obviously, we probably don't need anywhere near $125,000 in spending approval to support the neighborhood revitalization program. But I have a couple of questions for Mr. Coffey. And when I went out and looked at the next 3 to 4 years budget that we've got in place, I didn't see. Could you tell me if there's anything in the budget that we forecast thus far that will be helped by having a $125,000 spending limit aside from the NRP? Are there any other purchases that we need to consider this for?
Although I watch Law and Order on Sunday mornings, this is probably really getting into Cliff's bailiwick. There was back in, I think, 2014 or 15, a use of that charter amendment, the charter clause on a proposed restroom just south of the lawn bowling.
Yes.
And that, a lot of people I spoke to afterwards, I think they were confused on the language, because there's a certain way referendums have to be written. But my understanding, the way Cliff has explained it, what we're looking at within the next 5 years, the NRP would be the only thing this really would be applicable to.
That would be the only thing. And having a much higher spending cap would not facilitate a more efficient or a better district operations from your office in any way.
Well, the spending cap largely doesn't impact our operations. Yeah. It's, something new, the restroom where there wasn't a restroom, the way, and I'm paraphrasing what Cliff has told me before, but the reason the cap doesn't apply at the beach is we're putting a permanent restroom right where we've always had porta potties. So we're replacing restrooms with sanitary restrooms. There are some things that not funded, but some things that I think the community could look at. There's a small piece of land just south of the MECO RV lot that we could acquire and expand the MECO RV lot into that would have a relatively quick return on investment. There's those properties off of Falcon that are more expensive, but when you look long term at Barefoot Bay, we have very little extra land to work with. Storage, I jokingly like to say we're the land of sheds, because in the past, before previous court findings, building a centralized storage building and having the land to build that on, previously the cap was thought to apply to that. One of, I think, the long-term needs of Mr. Getz's department is a centralized storage facility that we don't have sheds every place, because when we look to, right now with the Building A renovations project coming, we had to rent 2 pods to store the kitchen equipment in because we have no place else to do it. So those are some things that are not in the 5-year plan, but are things that I think the community needs down the road that this would help alleviate.
Yeah, I'm certainly not necessarily opposed to it, but there will be a cost. And again, if we don't properly package it and sell it to the community, it's almost surely to fail. At least that's what history says. So I'm really looking for those reasons to support it, and then to be able to go out to the residents of Barefoot Bay and say, here's why we should support it as a community. I'm all for increasing it if it will help our neighborhood revitalization program. The amount, I'm just not sure. It almost feels like that $125,000 is more than we need for Neighborhood Watch, and maybe not quite what we would need for a couple of the projects that you mentioned, Mr. Coffey. So I guess the number's the issue that we would have to decide on. And again, I got to tell you, just knowing the community like I think I do, it's going to be a hard sell. We could do it, but I think it will be a hard sell.
Roger, a couple of things. You're right. I don't think I would ever agree to put a referendum out there for improving the cap to $125,000. That's not something I think I would do. But I can tell you, and just as a one case, that we had a property that the NRP wanted to purchase, and because it was just a matter of less than $1,000 over the $25,000, we lost that property. It was then purchased by someone else, and it turned into a rental. And It's a property that should have been gone. And so, again, I think we're looking at something where we have to just come up with I think it's an important thing we should look at doing. We have to come up with a number, and you're right, go out and justify to people why we want it. If you've ever run bond issues, and I've run a lot of them, you can go out and you can tell people we want to build a new building and we can do it for $16 million, and you can go and it'll be defeated very easily. You can go back out and say, this is exactly what we need, and we can do that building now for, $1 million, and all of a sudden you've got a different scenario on your hands because you explained what you really need it for and what you're going to do with it. I think that's something that we have to look at as a number, simply so that right now the NRP can continue to function, continue to buy some of these properties that we would like removed so new homes can come in.
So that number, what we're really saying is we need the number that will support our neighborhood watch.
Exactly, whether it's 40,000 or 50,000 or 30, something that would support NRP right now.
Yes, and I agree.
That was my point at the last meeting, is that we need to continue that program, and if property values are going up and they're going to price them out of our range at 25,000, it's a redundant program.
So, in other words, you can go any place between 50 and 75,000 because it's all just for the NRP, buying the property. There's nothing else. And so, by going to 125 or 150,000, whatever it is, nobody's going to go for it. But maybe go between 50 and 75,000 somewhere, and explain everything in detail. Explain it to me.
And that's the point. See, if you come up with a number that's lower. And you explain that we just really want it for certain things. That's what we're trying to do right now.
That's right.
Rather than coming with a big number and they say, well, what are they going to do with that now? What are they going to buy with that amount of money? Well, no, we need some money so that we can continue a program. What that dollar amount is exactly, I don't know. But right now at 25, it's going to hurt us.
Mr. Reppinger, that cap is per purchase, right? In other words, it's not cumulative. In the course of a year or across 6 properties, it's a cap per purchase.
It's per expenditure. I'll give you something else to think about, and you all know your own constituency better than I know it. So whatever is politically palatable is an issue for you all to discuss. But just to give you some things to think about, and we've shifted the focus really heavily onto the NRP program, which is fine. But there are examples, and John mentioned one of them, which is the restroom project that had been planned for the community center area. There may very well be capital improvement projects that fall in that $100,000 range, wherever it would be, up to the 125 from where we are now, that make a lot of sense, that the public would favor. And that the board would want to move forward with, like that project, that are new projects that maybe fall outside the cap that you'd want to move forward with. You may not know what they are sitting here right now, but I can envision a bunch of projects that would be above the cap that you may want to, that would be probably viewed favorably by the board. And so you want to have that flexibility. Right now, and I don't know if this is a selling point or a non-selling point, but right now, with regard to, and again, you need to think in terms of, if you're thinking things outside the cap and things inside the cap, things that fall outside the cap are operational and maintenance things. So if it's operationally based or maintenance based, it generally is going to fall outside of the cap. The stuff that's just brand new, and going back to the restroom example, in my memorandum that kind of analyzed that situation, my recommendation at the end was to put it out for a referendum because I couldn't guarantee that I was sure that it was outside the cap. I could make an argument that it was outside the cap, but I couldn't guarantee it, and that's why I said that I thought it was, in an abundance of caution, the best thing to do was to put it out for referendum. But if you see projects like that fall in that range, right now, obviously you're engaging in large-scale capital improvement projects that are far in excess of the cap, but because they're maintenance or operational, they're outside the cap anyway. So you're already doing those large-scale projects that are of huge benefit to the community, that the community favors and that no one really has a objection to. And so the question is, do we want to give ourselves a little bit more flexibility on projects that might fall within that range, that might be on the questionable end of whether it's in or outside the cap, to allow ourselves the ability to be able to make those improvements without having to go out for a referendum? Because the other thing to keep in mind is, just because you have this limitation in the charter, it's not an absolute prohibition. It doesn't mean you can't spend that much money on a particular project or a particular property. You just have to put it out for referendum first. And over the time that I've been here in the 13 years, we have put out a few specifically targeted projects for referendum, and they have not passed. They have.
But
they
Cliff,
have failed.
I got to make sure, if I understand you correctly, you started out saying that we could look at a higher amount because there may be some other things that we would want to do. Did I get that right?
I'm saying it's your. It's obviously it's the board's purview.
I understand, but that was kind of the premise, and my idea is exactly opposite of that. I can go out right now and go anywhere out here and talk to some people, and I can explain why I want to put the cap at $50,000 because I can give them explicit examples of why we need that money. If I had to go out to someone and say, I want you to pass this referendum for $150,000 because we need it to do some things for the NRP, and there may be some other things we need to do, it's done before it ever gets there.
And if we
You're
try to
not
sell
gonna
it,
pass that.
yeah,
It's just not going to happen.
if we try to sell it by saying projects like the restrooms up in the recreational area, it's doomed to fail because that failed. That failed miserably. So we don't have a lot of good examples to try to sell a higher
I
cap.
understand what you guys are saying, but if you send a referendum out for $50,000, you might as well shoot yourself. I mean, why bother? If you're only going to ask for a cap of $50,000, I think that's silly. I think it's silly to do that. I think you need to ask for a higher cap, and if you have to tell people, well, maybe we,
What are you going to do with it?
Well, I'm going to buy a new boat and a house in.
But what
I'm
would you
serious.
do?
What are you going to do with it?
I'm just
$50,000 you're
saying-
going
I'm just
to
saying to you
continue with
that-
the
I'm just
NRP
saying
program.
to you that okay, so the NRP needs money. Okay, the NRP needs money, but there's other things that go on around here, just like that piece of ground over that abuts the RV lot on Milko Road. That would be good to have. The RV lots make money; they bring money in. It would probably pay for itself in like 5 years or whatever, but without you're not going to buy it for $25,000. And and
Can you buy it for 125?
I beg your pardon?
Could you buy it for 125?
I
do
have
you
no
know?
idea. But the land down on whatever Balkan, people talk now and again about putting a building in. They want to put a building in that land, and I want to put trees in. But put buildings in because we need more space. We need more space. Well, there's no place to buy anything, to put anything, and if we have the money. I mean, we don't have to say we're going to spend it all. I mean, is that what people think you're going to do? I don't know. Maybe if it was worded right, it would go through. I don't know. But I just think to ask for $50,000 is, I think that's a waste of time.
I'd still say, I don't know if like Cliff was saying, though, if we go between 50 and 75,000, or if you want to go between 60 and 100,000, explain to them what it is for the NRP and for some, and give specifics and give it to in good detail, and try to sell that to them. Then it might go longer, but I'm still worried about it. I got a feeling no matter how you go, I have a feeling it probably will get shot down because they just don't want. I don't know. So it's up to the board. What do you want? What would you like? What's your wishes?
Well, I think at this point, education to the community is important, but we've got to be specific with that education.
Right.
If we go there, if we go to the community and we have the NRP, that's a specific educational point. If we go there and we have NRP and some other stuff, then we're not specific enough. And I have to agree with Mike. I would not be able to set to the people that have supported me in this position, I wouldn't be able to get their backing on that. And it would be that and or other stuff.
Right, okay.
And I agree. We need this for the NRP, and I don't want it to fail. And I just think that we need to be able to define it better. And I know that we can't say that our cap is only going to be used for NRP. So how do we walk? How do we walk? Question is, how do we walk through this? Get our NRP funded, and educate the community on why this cap being so low is limiting our hands on improving the community.
Dave Wheaton, who sat on the board last year, called me tonight. he was going to be at the A building, but something happened and he couldn't go. So he called me and said that perhaps an idea is to do, he suggested 8% of the total budget. 8%, instead of saying 50,000, 150,000, 3 million, whatever. He said, and then it would probably be different every year if you did a percentage as opposed to a definite number. That was his suggestion, as opposed to saying 50,000, 75,000, 125.
I don't, again, if you're going to go out for a it's been 25,000 for how many years?
Since
Always.
day one, since 85.
85. If you're going to go out for a number, an 8% number, you're going to go out for something up to $125,000. I will not be supporting it. I can guarantee you that right now. I couldn't explain it. I run bond issues. I can explain them, and I've never put one out that I could not go out to the people and say this is exactly what we need, why we need it, and the amount of money we need it. Not any new furniture for an office, not a new boat, not a new house. This is what we need, and these are the reasons why we need it. And I can support that, but I couldn't support some other arbitrary thing.
And I agree with Trustee Mino. I feel the same
the big
way.
question. So
You'll
the big
leave it
question
at
is,
the
do you
one.
wanna-
You'll leave
do
it
you
at the
wanna
one
set it-
thing.
I would want it at a number that I
Right.
can specifically say, you know what, for $50,000, our NRP, for instance, is not going to be handcuffed. Because they had to spend $26,000 to buy this property before and they couldn't do it, at least a 50 or a 40 or whatever that number is will allow them to continue. It's been $25,000 for all these years. Let's at least get it to 50 and continue with that NRP program, and we can explain it to people and justify it, and it's very hard to argue against it.
So now,
Okay.
hello. So now that I got you guys all worked up, so you think we should? So you think we should send it out for referendum at, say, $50,000? I hate to admit that, but for $50,000, we should. But that's what you're saying. You think we should send it for referendum, or you think we should just like forget it? And that was.
I'm
the
all
reason
for
for
it.
this
I'm
whole
all
thing.
for a referendum
for
to
the-
increase it.
And increase. I'll go for it.
I think the idea is great.
Roger?
Yes, I think that would be prudent, and I think it would have an opportunity to pass. I just can't fathom that we could get $125,000 or $150,000 to pass referendum if we can't get a $70,000 restroom, in the rec area through. We're not going to get what people will perceive as a free spending, measure through.
Randy?
Yeah, I'm with Roger and Mike on this. I'm definitely for increasing the cap for the NRP project. And I don't think that we're going to be able to get a referendum through that we can't explain. My only issue with it, of course, is still that miscellaneous other. While this board's intention is NRP, and I think that we're like-minded enough on this to feel comfortable that it's being used for NRP, 8 years from now we could have a board in here that goes, well, we have a cap of 50, so let's just go buy property or that's not designed to improve the property value that's in here by removing derelict homes. So I'm for it. I think that we should put it out to referendum, but I'd like to have some assurance that we're going to do some education in the community of at least what this board feels that increase is about.
So you're setting the cap at 50,000.
Well, and Randy, the one thing that would, I understand what your point is, the one thing that would help is the number that we're talking about. Let's say it's 50,000. The number we're talking about is really not a number that somebody can look at and say we're going to go out and do some great things with. It's small enough number as it is that it would simply be able to fulfill the idea why we want it, why I need it, or why I would think we need it, without anyone thinking they can go out and do something grand with it. It's just not enough money to do that.
That's a good point.
Okay. So the board is going at 50,000.
What's that?
You want to go for that 50?
I would support
Add a cap
a
at
referendum going to $50,000.
Okay. Luann?
I win. Yes, I agree.
Roger?
Yes.
And Randy?
Yes.
So we go at 50,000, Mr. Repinger.
Maybe you have a formal motion on that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion on that. Yes.
I would make that in a formal motion that we put a referendum out to the people to increase the cap to $50,000.
I need a second. Okay, is there any other discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimous.
We will bring you back a resolution calling for that referendum.
And I would suggest if we do this, I mean, again, I know you all have probably put these things out before, but if you're going to do this, you do it like you're trying to pass a bond issue, and you have some meetings, you have some information going out, the trustees get together with people, explain exactly why it is, so that when you get to that vote, you pretty well know if you have it or if you don't have it. And that's the way you pass those things, so I would be more than happy to help with that in any way.
Okay. Thank you. Community managers report.
At the ARC meeting earlier today, 11 consent items, 10 were approved, 1 was denied, 11 other items were approved, 5 old business, 2 approved, 1 approved with stipulations, and 2 denied. Next ARC meeting will be on the 7th of July. Violations meeting on the 12th. 35 cases were on the agenda, 30 came into compliance for the meeting, 5 were found in violation, 17 are on the agenda for this Friday. As I previously mentioned, the 19th hole will now open up on Wednesday, July 1st. Golf course, the irrigation satellite box installation is in progress. We hope to have it completed by this Friday. We've gotten one design in bid for the irrigation design. When we get the second quote, we'll bring that back to you for consideration. Another minor lake bank repair project will begin in early July. Golfers have been behaving well as far as the governor's guidance on picnic area after play, and Mr. Cruz has information to be revealed about a golf staff versus member invitational tournament this summer. Property services, it looks like we have a brand new floor in this building. It's because our custodians have scrubbed it inch by inch. It was amazing to watch them because they literally were scraping up inches of old wax off of this floor, and they were scraping it with like 2-inch blades, every square one at a time. We have done some of the early demo that we agreed to with Shaw Medical to help them get going forward, and facilitated the floor replacement of moving everything out of the kitchen. Mr. Getz's folks quickly got phase 2 for the pools opened over the weekend. They're beginning to make repairs to the clay path around East Lake and continuing looking for bids in various projects. A couple updates. The design for the lounge and lakeside expansion continues with, we had a virtual meeting to go over issues in the issues sounds bad, but questions that they have about minor things. And today we reviewed their conceptual elevations of what the outside of the building will look like. The civil and structural components are their next steps. We've received one analysis of the current sound system in Building A. We're looking for a second one, but in the meantime, I've reached out to Little Theater to try to schedule a meeting with them to obtain their input before proceeding, because they had donated some money to the Bay to help offset the cost of sound systems building. I didn't get a chance to put an update about the Building A renovations project. It is in process. It is in permitting. The fire marshal has a few minor questions. They anticipate within the next couple of weeks of getting the permit and moving forward. I've been in contact with Mr. Park about his proposal to work with us to let us directly purchase the equipment, saving the sales tax. We're looking at a potential savings of over $11,000 doing that. Mr. Henley will be talking with the auditors to make sure there's no problems, and if that's the case, at the next board meeting, I'll have an agenda item to allow you to formally waive the procurement process for this project. So in a nutshell, Mr. Park would make the order with the different vendors. We would set up accounts with them, and we would make the payment. He would take possession of the equipment, install it, and we would process a negative change order to take off the cost plus the sales tax. So, and that completes my report, and be able to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for John? None?
I do have one question, because I get a lot of questions about the status on the putt-putt course. Could we get an update on that for the people at home?
Yes. I don't normally like to blame vendors, but when we take in a specific sample of a border brick and we ask them to order this for us, and when they call and we drive up there with our big truck and it's the wrong size brick, nobody's happy. They've reordered the brick and it should be here early next week, and it's relatively, pardon the pun, downhill from there. We have the fence permit is up at the county. Once we get the brick, we have the structures ready to go in. We're looking forward to wrap this up, because this is could be a college classroom example of what can go wrong, will go wrong with a project.
Thank you.
Just one other question, John. Since we do not have Building A open and we opened D&E, I think, has anyone been using it?
I'm not sure about yet, but the calendar coordinator has been busy this week with folks trying to schedule. Most of the larger groups, and I'm looking at it right now, and not so much this week, but there are some Saturday Bridge group is moving in, and Euchre Club on Wednesdays.
We would still try to tell those groups about social distancing, yes, and making sure they're following our guidelines.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
An example is one of the card clubs. They're used to setting up the tables very close together on one side of this building. We explained to them, for their safety, we're going to spread the tables out throughout the building, and there is an additional gap between uses to wipe everything down. There'll be a person checking temperatures.
Anyway, okay, thank you. Cliff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Coffey made reference to, you're all leased up, so leases have been done. We are evaluating with professionals the ground lease proposal, so at some point in time, I believe in July, you'll probably see that, or a discussion related to that coming back to you as in terms of a fair rental rate for what was proposed by Stewart Medical. It's filing week in my office, so we're filing the 10 cases that we said that we would, and we're going to get you the spreadsheets on our DOR cases, including Blissful Things also. There's been no, despite the uptick in the numbers, there's been no additional administrative orders of the court in terms of limitation of any proceedings, so we're as wide open as we can be. I will note we've obviously been meeting in our limited capacity here without an audience. That executive order I did look at is set to expire June 30th. So I can't imagine governor's office as far as meeting. If there isn't a extension of that order, then obviously we'd have to plan for July, the first meeting in July, to be back to our normal meeting configuration if we're going to do that. But I can't imagine that they're not going to extend, the governor's office is not going to extend that. Guess anything's possible these days, but I'll keep you apprised of that if anything comes out of that office, and that's all I have.
Done?
Yep.
Thank you. Ancillary remarks. Randy.
Yeah, I want to welcome back all the staff that has come back, the bartenders that are back, and the pool hosts that are back. I also really want to thank the staff that continued to work, that did this beautiful floor in here. I can't wait for the homeowners to see it. It looks brand new. Matt and his staff have really knocked it out. It looks absolutely wonderful. Also want to give a thanks to the homeowners that went above and beyond for the community and made masks and passed them out, and have done their volunteer part in making sure that their neighbors are safe. To the CVO office for organizing that and arranging that. This community has really shown some beautiful colors through this really trying time, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's done that.
Thank you, Randy. Roger?
No, I'm going to defer my time, Mr. Chairman, to Trustee Henderson.
Luann.
Wow. I really don't have anything. I was listening to Randy. I'd like to thank all the people who were good enough to go to the pools and behave themselves, and I think that's wonderful. I'm very proud of everybody, and I really don't have anything else to say.
Wow. Mike.
Just one question, and I guess I compliment you. You brought up last meeting the issue about parking signs and people parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Did we say we were going to look at something in a policy adjustment or something? Because, and Joe, you know, when you mentioned it last meeting, I really thought, well, this is kind of a silly idea. We really don't have to deal with that. And yet, in the last week, I've seen 3 different occasions of 2 and 3 vehicles, cars, pulled way up next to the pickleball courts and everything, parked right there on the lake. Now, I'm not saying they're destroying anything, but I noticed what all of a sudden it was noticeable to me of what you were talking about, and you know, I'm kind of reversing a little bit, saying maybe we do need to do something about some signs or something saying that this is not a parking area for automobiles, because there were 3 of them there
Actually,
last
that's
night.
the only 2 green area spots I'm totally against, and them driving through there and everything. I don't mind the other one there.
Me.
And the other thing is that walking path where the people do the exercise, and I like to see the golf cars not be on there. But if they go anyplace else, I have no problem with that. But
That's all I have.
Okay. And I just want to let the residents and the rest of the board know that I have nothing against John's budget. Everything that's on that budget is terrific. He worked hard to do everything. The only thing is, when I seen the $1 million loan, that's when I backed off, and that's why I voted against it. But as far as it goes, that's why I voted for the assessment thing because I was for the budget itself and everything. But the only thing is just for $1 million, because I figure we have other ways we can maybe take maybe a little longer, but we can do without borrowing. That's just my opinion. And the only other thing is, I just want to say thank you to everybody that the two guys that did this building D&E floor. It looks brand new. So residents and everybody that come in here should when they do see Butch and all them, that say thank you very much for a great job here. And that's not just here. That's for all the different jobs that these people did. What they couldn't do during regular season because they either overlooked it or they had something else to do, but they must have did at least 130 different jobs, fixing up and everything, and they're still working on some of them. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that's doing the work there. That's a great job. And next thing is the next meeting will be July 10th at Building D&E, Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. right here in D&E. I need a motion to adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.
talk to you.